A little center downtown Las Vegas, just off the airport, that we found to hold this out of. We've got Mike Iaconelli here, of course, Jeremy DeHart's here, Randy McBride. We've got people here from Garmin, from the Apex Tour, and others, Kevin Short. And we'd like to sure say that we're glad y'all took time to tune into this. So I'm not the best presenter. I'm going to go off and say that, but I've got this role, so we're going to move forward. And once again, anyone that has any questions, once we get through this, a brief presentation, we'll have a Q&A period. At that time, Mike will monitor that Q&A period and ask any questions you've got online. We'll try to get you answers. So thank you very much again for tuning in. Our mission statement going forward is we have a mission statement to set growth of freshwater fishing first in every action. Pardon me, I don't have a prompter. So to expand angling on the West Coast, create a stage to promote anglers as sports figures, reaching individual prominence, and all congregating as bodies, groups, and businesses and anglers in a joint effort as stewards of the sport. What this is all about is 100% to try and grow fishing on the West Coast. When I say fishing, this is an effort to grow trout fishing, any fishing. Joining us on this call today are conservation agencies, biologists, all of the industry that was invited to attend, and we hope you shared that with others. At this time, if you haven't, then certainly we're going to record this call, and you'll be welcome to share that Zoom call with anyone. And we want you to tune in, and we want to spread this message. Bass Cat Boats and Wild West, One Bass, and ABA, and Best Bass Trail cannot promote fishing and grow it on the West Coast. To do that, we need everyone. So this is a joint effort of all. How did we get to this point? In order for us to go to this point, we started with Best Bass Trail and Randy Pringle. Randy was a mission in the first part of this. He was familiar with a boat dealer of ours, a friend of ours that had a lure company in California. And then we sort of started our effort on the West Coast with Randy Pringle. The next part of that became going into One Bass, as we saw an opportunity with One Bass in the U.S. Open Championship. So the U.S. Open, which was just held yesterday, was a great event. It's been a marquee event for the West. But realistically, there's a turn in anglers every year on the West. The West has more population than anyone, and we definitely want to focus on trying to grow angling when the largest population base is centered around these cities. When we went through One Bass, we moved on to the next portion, and that was an achievement we made with Jeremy DeHart, and Jeremy is here. And what we wanted to do with Jeremy is we've made a mission with him to start several things, and this started back almost 3 years ago now. And 2 years ago, it finally came to fruition on what we wanted to do. So 2 years ago, we made an effort to start what is today the Apex Tour. The Apex Tour is to give a marquee platform for anglers on the West for a true tour event series, as well as to then join others in the growth of the West, and that being the One Bass Tour, and then following that up and supporting it with what is the Toyota Series. Today, we have Wild West Bass Trail growing every day. We have the Pro-Ams growing. We have team events growing. We have One Bass back from its former fallback, and it's trying to attain dominance again. And then we've got ABA, and with Craig and Mike, we've asked them to step up the program on what we call white space and grow small events across the country. As Bass Cat, we can't do this on our own, so we have to have your support. And what we're asking for today is all of your support to grow the West. So this effort and what we're going to do is where this announcement leads us to. So at this time, why did they bail? Why did people leave the West Coast? We're going to show some numbers that come out of industry, and this is a heat map of boat sales we have access to that we purchase. This is a heat map only of the West Coast. So if you look at the gray markets, you'll notice that the gray markets on the heat map, those are virtually where no boats were sold. The light green, obviously, are single to 3 boat purchases, and darker green areas are high content. So as you see this market, you notice the West Coast is tremendously void of what's boat sales. And we'll be glad, Mark, to share that with you. So you don't have to take a picture of it. We'll be glad to share that with you. But that tells you the story on the West Coast. We're going to tell the story a little bit more in just a second. The next slide has data that's out of Walmart on terminal tackle. Thanks for joining us, Billy Egan. That's why I drove around. Yeah. So Billy just joined us from One Bass. So this slide tells the story, and as you look at the slide, you can see that regionally across Arizona, California, Colorado, this number is a 3.7-year study pre-recession, so it's prior to the recession. This is the last dominant period, and it tells you the percent of USA business in these states. At the time, Arizona was very small, but since then that number has changed tremendously. This number on baits is terminal tackle in Walmart over 2 years of 2007-2008. And then this is bass membership state to state. So as you look at bass membership state to state, you look at terminal tackle sales, you look at everything, the West Coast has never represented a tremendous following. It's only represented about 7 to 7.5, closer to 8 now. There has been some growth of the market in fishing, in freshwater fishing, bass fishing. Our goal is to see this number grow between 20 and 60%. In order to do that, we're asking everyone here to join in. Everyone that competes on the West Coast has to travel to the middle part of America to fish their championships. So if you fish a Toyota Series, you travel last year to Kentucky. So your guys are strapping up, they're running 2,500 miles across country. It's a long way. So the same runs true when bass comes to the West Coast. And it's the same thing as why did they bail. The West Coast, everyone comes out here thinking they're going to change it. One company cannot change this. In order to do this, we're going to move on. But in order to do this, we're going to change the platform a little bit. And at this time, what we want to do is we want to say we need every company. We need Skeeter boats. We need Ranger boats. We need every tackle company. We need Zoom. We need Pradco. We need we need True Turn. We need every company in this business, Berkeley Trilene, obviously Strike King, Rather Outdoors, Lew's, virtually every company from Garmin to Lowrance to Humminbird to engage this for us to move forward. And the power poles of the company, we can only grow if all of those companies come in and assist us. So at this time, what we want to do is we're going to move on. We're going to hand this over to Mike Iaconelli. We're going to let him make the announcement on what we're about to do.
Thank you. Golf clap. Thank you. This is Rick's got these amazing slides and stuff, but I did want to talk for just a second real quick before we officially make the announcement, which is this is a really cool thing that's happening right now, this time that we have. There's a lot of similarities between me being in the Northeast and you guys being out West, which is we have always been a little bit of a stepchild when it comes to the sport, right? So to see this new energy and focus that's happening right now, that's really, really exciting, right? And I'm very conscious, Rick's very conscious, we're all very conscious of growing the sport. You know, seeing kids out. It was great at the tournament this week. I saw kids with jerseys on. Like, that's the stuff that's got to happen, right? So this energy and momentum that's happening right now, it's great. It's a great time. All right, what do we got here? All right, what are we going to do? I don't know. What are we going to do? Let's see. So we're going to, you want me to get that? I'll get that. Yeah, for you. It's for me. Rick mentioned in his presentation earlier, marquee events, and that's so important. And once again, in the Northeast, we've never had marquee events. We've never had events that centered around the Northeast. You had to drive, you had to go far away, right? And now we're creating a marquee event, a true championship event. And he mentioned it, not that you have to drive 3 days to, but that's out here in the West. And here it is, the Western Bass Shootout. Man, they didn't come from Havasu. I can tell you that. I mean, or Lake Mead, those fish. That looks like Florida. March of 2023 is the date. Qualifications, right? The top 50 West Coast anglers, top 50 in the world anglers coming from the West Coast. Here's how we're going to get to that number, okay? 10 from the BAS WAN-BAS AOY standings. Does that make you happy? Okay. 10 from the Toyota series, which is a great circuit, right? Important circuit. Keep going. 10 from the Wild West Trail Pro-Am, another great circuit out here. And 20 from the Apex, right? So what's cool about this is a true championship event, right? I'd put it up there with Red Crest. I'd put it up there with the Classic. I'd put it up there with the Kayak Classic. This is a championship event. This is to say, you know, hey, we have great anglers out here. These are our best anglers. And there's a lot of prestige and some money attached to it. What do you got for me next? All right. We've got an outdoor show attached to it. That's really cool. You know, I can remember being really young and going to my first Classic, which was in Richmond, Virginia, on the James River. And when you're young and you see the excitement, the energy of an outdoor show, we're going to have great vendors there. Indoor weigh-in. Rick, do we know where? No announcement yet. Okay, indoor weigh-in, which is nice because there's rain and mosquitoes, stuff like that, you know. I don't know. Vendor booths, of course. So, you know, a lot of the companies are going to come out and support it. You know, I know there's this is the first announcement, but there's already chatter about this from industry people. People are excited. Entertainment and food. Food is good. Entertainment's good too. Stage and media presence. That's the other thing. Rick and I talked about this. One of the important things that's tied to this isn't like going to be a hidden event. This is going to be an event that's nationally publicized, right? So we're going to have great media coverage, live coverage, TV coverage, print coverage. It's going to be great coverage on it. All right, fan base. This is kind of where it all connects. And Billy, I got to tell you, this week, the registration on, what day was that? So long ago. Sunday was awesome because I was incognito. Like I was just hanging out. Looked like a tourist, which I am. And I met so many people, right? And that interaction, that personal connection with people, you can't beat that, right? So we've got an outdoor show, and this is all for the fans and for wives and kids to come out, right? There's going to be an outdoor show on the water. We're going to see interviews. We're going to see stuff with the anglers. Tourney X, which is a great app that lets the fans participate with every angler out there. And in the kayak world, it's great because you can be anywhere in the world following along almost like you're in the boat, right? So great app. And then fish conservation, which I think is a priority for a lot of tournament circuits. But to keep the sport going, we gotta take care of our fish. What else you got for me? All right. Is this, we're taking some questions? All right. We're taking questions. If anybody has any questions here or via live, what are we on, Facebook or something? Where are we at here? Zoom call. Okay.
Is this going to be in a stadium like setting for
Conference center.
conference? Okay.
Well, we have an excess of 100,000 square foot for the outdoor show and weigh-in.
You can't hear them.
You want me to repeat that, or you want to come up, Rick? Okay.
Rick, if you want to go up there too, you can.
Yeah. Come up. And Rick's being modest. In about 5 years, we want to have this in a like Dodger Stadium. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We've got a conference center in excess of 100,000 square foot. We're in conversation. We've actually got an initial agreement on. We're going to hold the first event in the same place for 2 years as far as the actual conference center. The fishing location will not be the same place for 2 years.
And it'll be a drive-in, drive-up.
Drive-in, drive-up, weigh-in inside. Really, template mark is on the same base, which we showed a video in the teaser That is Crappie Expo by Wally Marshall. The template for this is very much mirrored to what an FLW event is in the old Cup days, where you would have an FLW Cup Championship in a smaller coliseum, smaller convention center. This is a little larger convention center. We think we need a little larger convention center than what FLW uses because they were limited in their sponsorship to only sponsors of the event. This one, we want everybody to play. We honestly want Yamaha, Mercury, Suzuki, everybody to come out to do this. And so in order to do that, we need more room. So we've looked at the template of a Crappie Expo. The one in Shreveport that Wally had earlier in the month, they had about, I think he had about 90,000 square foot. And that was his template. And it's the same template for this, with one end doing a stage presence and then the other end having in the same hall.
Nice.
I know you're still working on, do you have the state in which?
We have the state, we have the water, we have the conference center.
Do you have the state that you can mention?
I think we want to hold, I'll tell you the state. It's going to be California.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be California. In the central of this, the California and Arizona markets are the primary markets on the west. And they represent almost 69%, I believe, of the West Coast bass boat sales, West Coast bass boat anglers, whether you're talking about basses or any others. They're the majority of those anglers. So we're going to focus on the hot spot. And the hot spot, no doubt, everyone's going to say that it's going to be on the Delta, but it's probably not on the Delta as you know it. That's not where our place is, but it's definitely going to be in that circle of San Francisco, we'll say.
Because I was thinking Riverside County or somewhere, in the south is pretty good hot spot, but I know 3 big dealers.
Yeah. Well, we're targeting it on the largest angler base. That's the target.
I have a couple questions over here. Will there be co-anglers?
This will not be. This will be a Marshall type event.
Double qualifiers, how do you go through those?
We have a process to go through double qualification, and it'll basically be tiered, and we're working on the final details on that, but we will have some double qualifiers because there is lap over on some of the events.
Yeah, we could have even more than that. We could have triple.
Yeah, we could have triple qualifiers because some people participate in all 3 sections.
Is there going to be an entry fee for those who qualify?
There will be an entry fee at this time because basically we have no revenue stream at this time, so there will be an entry fee for the qualifiers.
Will there be media allowed in boats during an event?
That comes back to the Marshall side. There will be media in boats.
That's it so far.
I have a question for Mike. Like in the early days, you helped build the Elite Series to what it currently is, and based on what you see that Bass Cat and One Bass and Fly West are trying to build here.
Yeah.
In the early days, you were like, man, is this really going to be what they say it's going to be?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of dark days in those early years
Yeah.
when you guys built that. You share your experiences with that with us, and just
Yeah.
like 2 years down the road, you're like, man, this ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
And then to look at what the Elite Series is now,
Yeah.
and then what it has spawned.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you?
Yeah, well, 2 parts to that. The one thing is I want to put Rick on the spot real quick and tell you that the interesting thing about this, and he mentioned it real brief in the slide, but Bass Cat and Rick, they're in this for the long haul, and you need people to have that mindset, right? So this isn't, we're not looking at a 1 or 2 year thing, right? This is 10, 15, 20. This is a thing that they're trying to develop. So that's a good thing to know, that this is a long-term mindset, right? That's awesome. From my experience, the interesting thing is you have to, you guys have so many great anglers out there, and they're in this room right now. I mean, talents with not just fishing skills, but personality and brands, right? And they're different than the norm, which is good. Another similarity, right? I'm from Northeast. You guys out here, the West Coast guys are different. It's good. And you have to have venues to highlight that, right? You have to have these kind of events to highlight that and get to people. And that's the goal of all this, is to get to people, to help them see this, new people. And, for me, those early years were tough, but once that exposure came, once the tournament circuits were getting new coverage and new exposure, then we saw the sport grow. We saw brands grow. We saw a Southern dominated sport all of a sudden change and have West Coast guys and Midwest guys and Northeast guys. And they need that. International guys. We need that in the sport. And so, the more the merrier. And this is a really good thing. Focus on an area that has been, ignored largely. And I'll be honest, from a selfish standpoint, I hope this happens in the Northeast, next stage.
That's a good one, because I left out that we've actually challenged an organization to do a different take on the Northeast. So the Northeast, the two target spots on this effort, and I hope they're tuning in. I know a couple of people in that organization are tuning in. The two target spots are the West and the Northeast. So we want a different effort in the Northeast, but we think that 7%, the Northeast numbers are no different than the West numbers, believe it or not. You got about 7% in the Midwest, 7% in the Northeast, 7% on the West, and most of the people in the room have heard me say that before. I just gave you the data, which you hadn't seen, and we want to see that Northeast grow. The Midwest is a really unique market. It has a tremendous amount of multi-species market. So the actual multi-species market, the #1 municipal town in the U.S. for any fiberglass fishing boat sales for freshwater is Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that's not bass boats, it's everything, and it's a great market. Minnesota's a wonderful market, but it's all walleye business. So the goal of this is to grow outside of those little markets and grow into the West and the Northeast, and that market's already grown. It's got its own thing going on. It's just not bass fishing. So we want to see that grow out to the Northeast and the West on the same template. So we've challenged an organization. We're in early stages on that. We have spent several hours together, and we definitely think that will come together, and they're engaging here, and we've engaged. MLF knew about this. We asked MLF to stay and hold Toyota out here for a couple more years. They need Toyota to be a much larger event, and we want it to be a much larger event. The only way we make this happen is we get some of the guys that are in the closet to dust off their fishing gear. And we need some of the old guys to dust off their fishing gear. We need some of the new guys to dust off their fishing gear. When we look at the template of one bass, for example, and Billy's right here, right now you have a cycle turn every year of some anglers. And we need that cycle turn to start staying, because you cycle a number of anglers every year that, whether it's in AAA or in the pro side, they cycle, and new guys come in to some degree. And we want to see that cycle in and get people to stay in the sport a little bit. And then hopefully we can grow that. One of the things we've done with this that starts on our side, what we're doing at the bottom end, is, I mentioned it earlier, is challenging the ABA. And we certainly have picked up the ABA on the West Coast, so we can pick up the small spots and get small events in certain areas of the country. We need directors on Fort Peck. We need directors at Martinez. We need directors in Southeast Colorado, Southwest Colorado, Northeast Colorado, the corner of Nebraska. We need everything in this side of the West to pick up small events that have some type of way for people to go to a championship. And we're also engaging John Stewart and Bass Federation in this also. So the Bass Nation Federation, we want them to come in and help us and assist and grow this thing. We've all got to grow this together. We can't grow it as one. So in conversation, that's where the mission is.
Got a question. The format of this, the whole picture, appears to be just a grassroots feeder into this event. Is this going to grow into? Is this the shootout? Is this the end of the line, or do we see this feeding into other or larger organizations?
Well, anything that it feeds into, and there is a long-range plan, Vince, but certainly Jeremy and I are involved in that long-range plan, and there is a 5-year thought process here, and we are in conversations on other things, but right now we're not prepared to discuss anything beyond what we're presenting today. Now, that's what we'd all want to do, yes. And so there is a thought, and those conversations will have to be ongoing, and those are business decisions. They get beyond this room.
Thanks. Mike, welcome.
Thank you.
So do we have any numbers on attrition? How many anglers we're losing per year or per 5 years or anything like that? Is there any numbers in that?
Well, on the West Coast, no, we don't. I mean, you can pull it off the U.S. Fish and Wildlife study and look at license sales growths and fails. They're there. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does a great job of presenting the numbers. It's really hard where you've got some saltwater numbers because they do skew the mix some because the license sales on saltwater are mixed in certain states. But, there has definitely been an attrition in anglers over the years. We have seen a tremendous growth since COVID, as everyone knows. So the outdoor industry, I don't care if you're buying hiking boots or golf clubs, they're hard to get. And boats are certainly hard to get. So we've seen that growth, and so we don't know what the attrition was before that. I mean, it's there, but you're right. Well, if you go back, David, to answer that question, the Fish and Wildlife Service had a 20-year slide before the 2010 recession in license sales across the USA, not just the West Coast, across the USA. And we saw the recession of 2008, 9, 10 pick that number up. And the number I just haven't tracked the license sales since as much as I probably should. We've been in a resurgence since the recession and certainly haven't,
So you did mention about, the heat map. Have you thought about, and I can go back to Garmin and try to get this, and I can talk to Lawrence because I know a lot of people there, of looking at specific SKU numbers that we know that more likely are going to go on a bass boat. They're going to be used for 3 operations, either bass, walleye, or crappie.
Well, no.
And try to get those sales numbers, and that would gravitate you to then, here's what's being sold in California, here's what's being sold in Arizona, stuff like that.
I'm sure you know Larry Rankin.
Yeah.
Larry and I had a good conversation back in his days at Ray Marine, and I hope Larry's on the call. But Larry, when he got in and Ray Marine was coming, which Ray Marine's got, as you know, in being Garmin, got a lot of technology that's shared among all the companies.
Right.
And they've really good company, Ray Marine. Even though they're not engaged in our business at this time, they're a really good company, and they've got a lot of technology. So when you look at a company like Ray Marine, we looked at Larry in the early days of Ray Marine coming into this business, and I asked him how many units he could sell in the market. Larry is the only man I know that pretty much knew this market. There are probably 2 that I know that know the market in depth to that level. Another one is a gentleman that's not in the market anymore, a guy named Ben Jarrett. And I think they probably have the best finger on this market of any of the people I know in the market today. And I look at that from the standpoint of basketball sales. The unique thing about that question, can you do that? Yes. We got the numbers. We could take these boat numbers down to your subdivision. We could tell you what address they're at in most of the states. Some of the numbers are states. We only have state and county numbers, but in most cases we can take them down to where your neighbor bought a boat. So we can get the boat numbers. We cannot get your numbers, which would be an interesting take if we could get the numbers of Garmin 93s that were sold, or 126s.
Right.
And those,
that's where I was going.
yeah, and that'd be an interesting take, because what that's doing is indicating to people that are upgrading equipment that are not buying new product, and that's a really good aspect, because a good portion of yours is aftermarket sales.
Right, and that's where I was going with Live Scope and EchoMap.
Yeah, that would really, you probably have, in what you all have done,
Right.
one of the best viewpoints on where the market is. You probably do.
Right. And you can
Quite
do that with
honestly.
Lawrence and Live Site.
Yeah, but those numbers are newer than yours.
Correct.
What you guys have done with the Panda Optics view on the new stuff, and everybody in the industry, whether it's side imaging from Humminbird or down scan from Lawrence, everybody's going to chase everybody, and everybody's got their little thing, and that's not saying anything negative about any of those companies. But within the last 5 years, you probably have the best picture window on the actual bass market. And some of that's lapped into crappie, because there's a big crappie sale on that live unit.
And that was another question I was going to ask you. You talked about multi-species. Okay. Are you, in the big picture, because I always look at the big picture down the road, have you looked at, and I've talked to Jeremy about this, have you looked at other tournaments to get going on the West Coast at all?
We've had
Maybe to
conversations about trying to get other events out here, but not as this group. That comes back to us.
Right.
So we have had conversations with other people about other events out here, and those are early. We've got to get this ball rolling first. But yes, we have had, this comes back to something, majority of bass anglers are pretty good. The core tournament bass anglers are pretty good conservationists. They really care about their fish, are not going to take them home. I won't clean a fish. I learned long ago I don't kill the gold goose. So I just won't hardly clean a bass, And my mother-in-law doesn't understand that, and she's not watching the call. But from this standpoint, we want to get the conservation agencies engaged with us at that level. Then we can grow this event structure differently. We want to get the trout guys involved in it at a different level, maybe have different trout events, what they call a trout derby, And so we want to do that. We want to get the crappie involved. When I said early on, we want to grow freshwater fishing on the West, we do. But we also have to change a mindset on the West Coast, because there's a difference in Texas and Oregon. Oregon really doesn't understand bass anglers. I mean, that's not being mean to the Oregon Conservation Department. They just don't have the grasp of what's going on. And Texas or Florida have a total grasp of what's going on. And you look at Gene Gilliland, and I hope Gene's on the call. Gene was invited to the call. Gene has a great aspect of Bassmaster of what's going on, and he'd certainly be a huge asset to us to get those people involved and then to try to grow their engagement. When we do that, we can grow event engagement where they see those strengths at. So those are all things that we hope comes through this.
Yeah, if they had, I was going to say real quick, if they ever have a striper tournament, I would have won last week. On Mead, I would have won the striper tournament.
Yeah, you got to stay out of Hemingway's.
Man.
They're all over the dock over there,
Jeez
man.
Louise. Crazy.
I had a couple questions about the event itself. What kind of format is the fishing of the event going to be? Is it going to be similar to like the Apex event, or is it a 5 fish, or?
We're gonna, the initial type we've talked about is a 5 fish format. That's what we talked about initially, but then to use the measuring just strictly for live use.
Okay.
So basically you're measuring it. That's still up in the air, and Jeremy and I just finished that conversation, 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes before the call started, and we're still working on what we want to do with that, and that's going to be as much Jeremy's call as anything, and Jeremy and Randy will figure that out. But we also want to realize we have a fan base, and we have to have a fan base, and to get a live fan base in an auditorium or in a convention center, and this will be a major convention center, then we want to turn around and give that convention center something to see. So we've got to figure out how we come up with that template.
So we're also, 2 more questions. We're going to have marshals for the event. Also, that's a plan.
Marshall Media. Yeah.
Marshall, and then also live coverage during the event.
Right. Yeah, Billy Egan from One Bass.
Are the other organizations who are graduating some AOI people into this event going to have any input on some of these questions or answers that are being asked, like the format?
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, it's open for discussion, yeah.
It's like you said, that on this side of it, we've got to have all of us. We're not going into this blind. From an organization standpoint, y'all are a part of it. One Bass is a part of this. We need you to grow, and if we don't grow this, we're all going to keep doing the same thing out west. And it's been done repetitively many times. You can keep bringing us Dave Gleavy's and the famed flipper of his own, and then you can bring us Don and all the others, Ivino, and those are come to the country. They've come out of the west to the country, and certainly that's been great things that have come out of Gary Klein and others that have went out and fished in the Midwest. But we've got to grow people beyond them. And that's what this mission is. And so your involvement's going to be there, and we make those decisions.
Have a couple questions on Zoom. Is there any consideration of taking the top co-anglers from each league and bringing them in?
That's been a thought, but we haven't decided to do that. We really tried to tier this to give that answer based on entry fee basis. So these were the premier pro events. So we really didn't take the co-anglers into consideration on that. There was some thought on it, some brief discussion on it, and I even had some inside thoughts on it last night too, to whomever asked, but it's really difficult to do, and especially when we look at some of the shared weight formats, which the West is famous for shared weight.
And there was another question, I think it was bouncing off of Vin or Kin. Are there any strategies slated with national partners, i.e. Major League Fishing, in order to provide opportunities for the winning Western Bass Shootout to participate, moving up to the next level?
Once again, conversations are ongoing, and those are developing that we think that we've got a long-term plan on some of that. All right, I want to say we're going to close the conference call if there's no more questions today, and everybody that's in the room, we're glad to hang around and talk about it at a little higher level. And I want to say very much appreciate Ken, Greg, Vince, Mark, everybody that came out. Certainly Garmin, David, and certainly appreciate everyone who showed up for the conference call today in Las Vegas. Took some effort to drive over here. I hope it was worth your time. We'll close up and give some more. This is a big project, a lot of time. I want to say thank you to Mike for redheading in here. I'm lucky, the blue lights are in the parking lot looking for you.
It's okay. It's not the first time. So.
Yeah, no, it's not the first time. But Mike had a little faux pas getting out at his place this morning and was running a little behind. So I want to say thank you for showing up and doing this for us.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the WON Bass US Open, man.
It was awesome. It was awesome. Honestly, it's a great timing to be here for the announcement because the energy there was just awesome. Billy, I told you, it felt so good. I got to stay out there at the ramp, and just the energy of the guys, the participants, was so awesome. I cannot wait to come back and fish again and again and again and again and again until I win that thing. So it was an awesome experience being out here.
Yeah, I want to say one thing. We use the word marquee event, and that's certainly what we want. We want a marquee event. But there's only one true marquee event. I tell people all the time there's only one. There's a lot of little meccas of bass fishing in the U.S., and personally I feel like there's only one kingdom. And the kingdom in the U.S. revolves around Sam Rayburn Reservoir. There's about any weekend you can probably find 300 boat bass tournaments on Sam Rayburn for 30 weekends of the year. I mean, there's that many, sometimes 600-800 boats on it. I mean, the East Texas High School Championship hosts just under 600 boats on Sam Rayburn. Wow. So it's quite an event, that whole lake. But when you look at the West Coast, there's really going to be one marquee event, and that is the U.S. Open. You can have California Opens, you can have Arizona Opens. There's really only going to be one U.S. Open. So we don't want this to be what the U.S. Open is. We want it to be a combination of all the above and the anglers of the year. And Jeremy, have you got anything to add before we close this?
No, I think you guys covered it pretty well.
So Jeremy, Billy, do you have anything to add?
No, just excited to see how this progresses and be here to support.
All right, so good?
I'm good.
All right, so we want to say once again thank you to everyone for tuning in. Mike, Thank you very much. And we hope everybody, we really mean it. When we said it, we meant it. I mean, Johnny, if you're listening, we're talking to you. We're here to grow the West, and we need everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
No.